On this episode of Book Report Podcast,
Italian Michael Jackson,
Book It Done Me Wrong,
Earworms,
Bryce regrets everything he says,
Jabberwocky,
Sam rambles about MST3K,
and much, much more.
'Tis a gift to be simple. 'Tis a gift to be Book Reports Podcast. And welcome to Book Reports Podcast. My name is Bryce Diener.
and I'm Sam the Quaker Shaker Tyler.
Our special guest this episode is Erik Ireland. Welcome, Erik.
Thanks, great to be here.
Absolutely.
Now,
Sam,
is that just Erik Ireland, or is there a title attached to that?
DJ, are you Reverend yet?
Yeah.
Okay, so Reverend Erik
I was going to
Ireland.
say, let's have more reverence around here. For
Sam, last episode,
Yes.
you had mentioned that one of your favorite master's programs for a college degree...
Not one, the favorite.
Okay, the favorite
master,
is
certainly.
Master of Divinity!
Do you by any chance
Erik,
have
do you-
that at
I
all?
do have one.
Whoa!
Wait, what do
Yeah.
what do you have?
A Masters of Divinity.
Please.
Yeah.
do
gotta
you
say,
mean Master of Divinity?
You're right, that's what I meant.
Okay, that's
that is, now, please tell me, what exactly does that entail?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Lots of hours of reading. Lots of hours of reading.
Did they teach you how to kill a person with one finger?
Two. That's the doctor's ministry.
Thank you for not casting aspersions on what we believe it to be.
Absolutely.
So what kind of books do you enjoy reading, Pastor?
I enjoy reading no books, basically.
So this was a true
yeah.
trial for you this month.
It was. Well, it was, this is a signed reading.
Oh, no wonder
degree.
nobody enjoyed it.
Yeah. I've had too much assigned reading. I'm not a reader.
Oh, that's a bit of a shame.
that sad?
Hopefully, by the end of this podcast,
Yeah.
you will love reading and hate us, as opposed to the other way around. Yeah.
And you know where it goes back to? It goes to Book It.
Yes.
I blame my disparaging...
Bryce,
Book It.
Bryce
Oh,
has
I
a
hate it.
delightful Book It story
Does he
about one
do?
of his friends. The driver man.
Oh, yes. Okay. Book It was the Pizza Hut program where
right.
you read 5 books during the summer.
Right.
They'd give you a personal pan pizza. My
right.
former college roommate, Bud Hostler, decided to pull into Pizza Hut one day, saw the big Book It sign in their window, reached into a glove compartment, pulls out the driver's manual, flips to the last page, puts his finger in it, walks in, and walks over to the counter and is like, hold on, wait a minute. Opens the book, pretends to read the last page. Done. This is my 5th book. And the guy's like, oh, okay. And gave him a personal fan pizza.
Did he really?
He got
Awesome.
So does your hatred of books color a hatred of pizza as well? Is that...
It does not.
Okay, that's good.
The transfers
That's good.
did not happen.
Oh, thank goodness.
Thank heaven.
That's a close call you missed.
That's
That would
right.
be too much. Yeah.
Yes, especially the greasy. Oh yeah, no, I still like that. Yeah.
Yours is first.
You're not going to introduce me? That's fine. Okay, I'll go.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Forgetting that he is first is...
Sam, Tyler.
This month, I've got a really terrific read that I enjoyed very much. One of the podcasts I listen to, The Good Friends of Jackson Elias, which is a horror role-play game podcast, mentioned a story by Henry Kuttner, and I realized that I had just picked up a book by Henry Kuttner very recently at a library book sale, so I thought, hey, here's some kids met, let's put these two together. The story is Mimsy Were the Borogroves, and that's a pretty famous story by him because it was made into a movie. They removed all the really good, important bits of the story, sadly, to make the movie, but it was still a...
What's a mimsy?
If you'll recall, Mimsy Were the Borogroves is a line from Lewis Carroll's poem Jabberwocky.
Oh, okay.
Slythy Toves and all that. It opens with a scientist who is either after humanity is gone or humanity has advanced so far that it's unrecognizable. He puts some of his child's toys into a time machine to see if it'll work and sends it back to the past. The experiment is a failure, though, because it doesn't come back. Okay, so there's this box of incredibly advanced children's toys in the past. And a couple of children in the 40s, which is, the time Henry Kuttner was writing most of his fiction is the 40s during World War II. These kids find this box full of incredibly advanced toys.
Is it just the new iPhone?
That is exactly what it is. there's a Teddy Ruxpin, a Furby, and the iPhone. Just a big stack of Pogs.
Pogs.
But these children find the toys, and because they are so advanced, it starts to change the way that children think.
Interesting.
One of the children is an older brother who's about 9 or so, and his sister is about 3. So his mind has developed a little bit more than hers has, so she's affected by the toys a lot more, and it completely changes the way her brain works. The two children eventually think in ways that their parents cannot understand at all. They're teaching these kids concepts we can't possibly understand yet. Because of this, the way the children learn is different, the way they relate to people is different, and eventually they think in a way that is so different, their parents basically lose them because the children cannot function at all in the world as it is right now and actually use their advanced learning from these toys to go to where the toys came from. It's a really good, horrifying story because it is all about that fear that parents have of, losing their children basically to the influences around them. And in this case, it's the children are too advanced for the parents to be able to relate to the kids at all. It's a really interesting story because what he's talking about in such a fantastic way is completely true and accurate and something that we certainly deal with today. I mean, how many parents are having trouble with their kids' iPhones or monitoring their kids' internet uses? I mean, that's one of the hallmarks I think of good science fiction is it relatable now or is it completely dated in the past?
Now, you had mentioned Jabberwocky earlier. Have you ever read that?
No.
I haven't read the whole thing, but I know of it. It is the equivalent of a stroke on paper. It's just nonsensical.
Well, the first paragraph, if I may.
Please, please step up to the microphone.
Let me see if I can recall. 'Twas Brillig and the Slithy Toes, did Gyre and Giblin the Wabe, and Mimsy were the board groves, and the Mome Raths out grabe. Is the first paragraph of Jabberwocky. And
put a wallet under his thumb.
The reason that it's like that is Lewis Carroll is just having fun making up words. And one of the reasons I can remember the first paragraph is he does go through, or Humpty Dumpty goes through, and explains what some of these words mean, but none of his definitions are helpful at all. And, well, the reason that is the title of the story is because there is a second crate full of toys, which is sent back in time to double check on the experiment. And that one goes back to the mid-1800s, where it's found by a girl named Alice Little, who goes to her fun uncle Charles Lutwidge, I think Lutwidge Dobson, who is Lewis Carroll. And she goes to him and she talks about all these new words that she just learned, and he then writes during the...
And Alice becomes Alice from Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, inspiring the stories, yeah. It's always neat when bits and pieces get connected like that. But it's really fun to read a book of short stories because you do get these different flavors and different sides of the author in very small chunks. Like, honestly, novels are overrated. I really think we need a lot more short stories than we need novels. There are so many novels that really should just be short stories. These are all small, self-contained, interesting ideas. I think probably my favorite story in this volume is the next one because of what an interesting experience I had with this story after reading it. My favorite story is Nothing But Gingerbread Left. Basically, this story, again, it was written during World War II, and the idea is, I don't know, a phoneticist or whatever you call somebody who's really good at knowing what word sounds mean and how they carry.
A nerd.
A nerd. There you go. That's the word we're hoping for. Hello, audience of this podcast. How are you doing today?
If you're smart enough to be a phoneticist, you're not listening to this. It's okay.
But anyway, in this story, a phoneticist, if that's what we're calling him, figures out that if you put certain words that rhyme or sort of rhyme together in a pattern, they can get stuck in your head like earworms do. Songs just get stuck in your head. And he says, if we make the perfect one of these in German, we could cause everybody in Germany's minds to rewrite themselves to just be saying this thing over and over again and to lose efficiency in the war effort. At the very start of the story, he says, okay, we're not putting the actual English version in for the sake of you readers, but here's the closest thing we have to it. And what's neat is as this earworm travels throughout Germany, you get these little vignettes of it changing these people's minds. And after each vignette, he has a version of it, which is left, 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 left. I left my wife and 17 children in a starving condition with nothing but gingerbread left, left, left. And after each one, he repeats it. So by the time you finish reading this story, it is stuck in your head like crazy. And for the next day, it was really hard for me not left, 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 left. I left my wife and 17 children in a starving condition with nothing but gingerbread left, left. And it was stuck in my head for the next day. So you have the exact same experience that everybody in this story is having of getting this earworm stuck in your mind.
So how did that affect you mentally?
I was able to cope with it, thankfully, because it wasn't the original German version. Worked out okay. But just the fact that through his style of writing, he was able to induce that in me was really, really impressive to me. That I had to experience whatever it was that was going on in the story. Probably the most terrifying story for me in this volume sort of picks up where the first story, Mimsy Where the Borgroves, leaves off. The last story is called Absalom, which is David's son who tries to surpass him. And this story posits a future where, because of radioactivity, mankind's intelligence is mutating with each generation. So there's a race of super geniuses that starts up. And then that race of super geniuses grows up and has kids, and they are super geniuses. And then this story takes place where that race of super geniuses who have surpassed their parents, are now having to deal with, we're not the quiz kids anymore. Yeah. We're about to be surpassed too. And it's basically the story of this struggle of a father who has to decide whether he wants to love his son, do what's best for his son, or hold on to the fact that he's superior to his son for just a little bit longer. And again, like, that's good science fiction because it's completely true, you know? Right. I mean, parents do sort of have to deal with the fact that their kids hopefully will someday surpass us. I mean, that is kind of a founding tenet of Christianity, of the idea of, you know, but wait till what the next generation is going to see. Yeah. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob just sort of had that throughout the whole bit of the early bits of the Bible is, you know, just that next generation. Now they're going to have the sweet deal of being in Jerusalem or that kind of thing. And it was really neat as a story how well he portrayed both sides of it, of how awful it is to be the parent who is surpassed, but also how bad it is to be the child that is incredibly gifted but held back by their parents' insecurities. And the ending really managed to put together the horribleness of both of those, with the child learning how to do brain surgery on his father and fixing his brain chemistry so that his father will let him do whatever he wants.
Oh my.
He basically forces his father to love him and hate him at the same time. And it's really a very horrifying ending to the story. Very, very well thought out, very, very thought-provoking. But again, like, that's the fun of Henry Kuttner. He is able to... Well, yeah, it's delightful fun. He puts these ideas that are completely true in such fantastic environments that really kind of pull out the real truth of what's going on and get you to think about both sides of it. How awful we can sometimes be to each other, whether we mean to or not.
Was this your first experience with this author?
I had read a couple of his stories before. I didn't know they were by him, but when I ran across him in the short story volume, I was able to identify him pretty quickly. But on the whole, it was a really fun book to read. And again, just reading a book of short stories is so much fun for me. I love getting those little tastes of different things the author can do. Not every idea needs to be a long novel. And just seeing a master work these little ideas into big stories is pretty great to see. Or big ideas into short stories too, I suppose.
Right. Now, when did you say this was written?
This is a compilation of his books that was assembled after his death.
Oh, okay.
So this is across his very short career. He died of a heart attack when he was, I think, 46. I think he died in the 50s. So he's just at the end where science fiction really starts getting a bit more of a bit more cachet with the space program starting up. So he really kind of died with a lot of work unfinished. His wife, on the other hand, who was a very close collaborator with him, they would actually sometimes just finish each other's paragraphs of each other's stories. Not finish each other's stories, but finish paragraphs and sentences for each other. They would leave stories half-typed, and the other one would just come by, he left this undone. There, another page. You know, they would just really have a close collaboration like that.
But only he got paid. Welcome to the
That is accurate. Most of these stories are probably by both of them, but only his name is on the title. Yeah. That is very true. His wife is C.L. Moore, by the way, if we're complaining about not giving her credit. Okay. Might as well give her her name.
Which is genderless.
Yes, right. That is very true. Yeah. Yes, it's genderless and it is initial, so you know she's an author.
That's right. Yeah. That was kind of like a fertile time for English.
50s and 60s?
40s, 50s, 60s. For lots of English literature.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, considering the fact that it is a period of great war, which is going to build such an experience for every single person who ever experienced anything during it. What a great sentence, Sam. Well done. Well done. Use experience one more time, would you?
People experience things.
People experience these things that are happening. People happen to experience of war. You know. You know what I mean. Right, Pastor?
I do.
So, Pastor Erik, as an avowed book hater,
yes,
what did you read this month?
This month I read Orality and Literacy by Walter Ong. So yes, I'm an avowed book hater, but I read a book.
Hi, Erik.
This podcast will either cure you or kill you.
Yes, it is Bookit's fault, because we had to read so many books. It wouldn't be Bookit's fault, except that our teacher adopted Bookit as a grade.
Oh.
So not only did you have to earn delicious pizza, but you had to earn delicious pizza by reading books.
Oh, that's rough.
And in so many, so Bookit, don't be wrong. So yes, since then I read only books that I'm assigned to read, and this is the case for orality and literacy as well. However, it was enjoyable.
Oh, that's good. At least you hated it and enjoyed it in equal measures.
That's in equal measures. Like every other book, I hated it, but it was good. So basically, the idea here is literacy is a technology that transformed human minds and communication.
That makes sense to me.
Into something brand new. As it happens, the intersection between faith and this idea is quite grand because our scriptures are by and large written by people who are oral communicators and who have brains that are tuned that way. And we do a great disservice to our scripture and to many of these ancient forms of literature, which is a strange word to think about, oral literature. We do a great disservice when we tear apart our scriptures or other ancient bits of literature like this through the technology of writing.
Well, that's a very interesting point. What is the foible of reading oral literature as literature?
Milman Perry is this dude.
What's the name?
Milman, M-I-L. He's a literary critic. He is studying Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, and he discovers that they are epic poems, right?
I would say it's safe to say. Yeah.
Greek alphabet by 500 years.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? So these things are rehearsed and then rehearsed and then passed from generation to generation, right? What he's discovering is that words ideas have several different ways of appearing in different verse. In the hexameter of these lines.
Like verb tenses and that kind of thing? Or
more like wine.
Okay.
We can say wine if our verse requires 2 syllables and we need to say wine, we can use this word or this way of presenting the idea wine. If you need 3 or 4, there's like a toolbox of ways to say wine.
I see. Alcohol, spirits, and so on.
There you are.
Or Baby, I'm a Want You, where Michael Jackson just adds the word to anyone. He needs one more syllable, and it's so obnoxious. It's the stupidest way to write a song. It really is.
Billie Jean is not
it's not my lover. Yeah.
I hated that song by the Jackson 5 where he added A to the beginning of ABC 1 2 3. B C
A B.
No, that's not long enough, Michael.
A B A C. Just to beat it. Just to beat it. He's Italian now. Just to beat it.
Why you not call your mom?
Italian Michael Jackson.
So Perry is discovering this, and he's noticing that, and coming up with this concept or this idea that we have traveling troubadour-like poets whose job it is to retell history or stories. And so this does put a little spin on the idea of what we have as our canon in the Old Testament. If we have stories that are told and retold, and much like any good artist nowadays, you don't tell something the way you've heard it. You spin it because of the occasion. Yeah, that's right. You do. So you spin it because of the occasion or because of what you're trying to highlight in this part of the epic for today's performance.
Earl, can you make the fights longer today? Would that be possible, please? My son just loves your fights. Yeah.
One cool illustration of this whole idea. In 1610, the Bible was... It's the Douay version, D-O-U-A-Y version of the Bible. Douay.
That's the thing that sprays water in the bathroom instead of toilet paper?
Oh, I thought it was the little couch in my sitting room. Okay.
We're both wrong.
Which also sprays water when you sit on.
I gotta get a plumber in there. I don't know what's happening.
It's not even connected to anything.
Would you look at my furniture, please? Why?
There's a water feature.
So, it rehearses about 10 different ways that oral memory is important and is different from literate memory. You have to have mnemonic devices. You have to have repeating stuff all the time. You have to have syllabic patterns to things. Stringing together ands, building on something is one of these ways that you remember. Because if you don't remember something, it's lost. And so this is an illustration of one. In the Douay version of the Bible, in 1610 is kind of preserving because the translators are better oral people than they are 500 years later.
That's
so
interesting.
They're recognizing this thing happened naturally.
That's
so here are the first 5 verses of Genesis, recounted by more oral people. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and the earth was void and empty. And darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved over the waters. And God said, Be light made. And light was made. And God saw the light that it was good, and he divided the light from the darkness. And he called the light day, and the darkness night. And there was evening and morning one day.
Oh my word.
Isn't that incredible?
That's pretty cool.
Going.
Yeah.
As opposed to 1970. In the beginning, when God created the earth and the heavens, the earth was a formless wasteland, and darkness covered the abyss, while a mighty wind swept over the waters. Then God said, Let there be light, and there was light. God saw how good the light was. God then separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Thus evening came, and morning followed the first day. It completely transforms how you hear it, how you think about it, because it's as much seen in the print as it is heard.
Right.
So isn't that a weird idea? So we've got this bag of tricks. You've got oral language. English has 1.5 million words, but you wouldn't have nearly that many. You'd have several ways of saying something. So we've got a little bit of that in our Hebrew scripture, where lots of psalms and the bits of poetry that are there are two ways of saying the same thing. Two ways of saying the same thing again. You know, we've got two lines and they're parallel.
English has so many loan words from so many different languages, which is one reason why we have so many words that mean the synonyms. Yeah, synonyms. Yeah. Why we have so many synonyms. Can you think like how easy it would have been for them to have synonyms, considering it was just one language pretty much for them, right? And maybe some loan words from nearby peoples. Is that how that was working?
I wonder.
I mean, if you consider the New Testament was written in Greek and Aramaic, as well as they probably spoke some form of Italian, that was certainly a Roman province at the time.
Well, it was also written in an empire too, which means there would have been a bit of loan words between different communities and so on.
Exactly, yeah. So I think they would have had it easier in the New Testament than they would have in the Old Testament, when that's just like strictly Hebrew.
Sure. And to a degree, like even today, with as close as we are, there still are so many words in other languages we have absolutely no meaning for. Like Russian has a word, I can't remember the actual word, but it means a man who you escape jail with that you plan on eating because you're going to starve in the wilderness. There's a word for that. You know,
all the time.
Larry. We call it Larry. Schadenfreude is an excellent word.
From the German.
There's absolutely nothing in English that comes close to Schadenfreude.
Do you know Schadenfreude? It's when you get delight out of someone else's pain. So if you...
Like this.
I can't believe we don't have one of those yet.
Well, Schadenfreude is fun to say.
I think we've started to adopt that word, and so it's becoming part of...
It's a loan word. It is exactly a loan word. Yeah, that's exactly right. But it makes me kind of wonder, though, how many loan words they have to be able to pull from if they were able to have different forms of loan
If you think about it, America's Funniest Home Videos lived off Schadenfreude. that was their whole base.
America's Funniest Hits to the Groin is basically the real name of that show. That's all that is. That's... some guys from MST3K wrote for that show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. J. Elvis Weinstein, who left after the first season, became head writer. And I think Trace Beaulieu, who was Crow for a while, was a writer over there as well.
Crow. Have you ever seen MST3K?
Yeah.
Oh, love that show. That's my favorite TV show of all time.
Is the new bit version any good? No, is it Netflix that has it?
If
it is Netflix.
Yeah. Are you a Mike fan or more of a Joel fan when it comes to MST3K? The Joel period, which is the first 5 seasons, and Mike is the latter seasons. Because Joel Hodgson is working with Netflix on this one and Mike is not, this follows very closely the model of the first 5 seasons as opposed to the latter Mike ones.
And see, I like Mike more.
I tend to
just because that's how I grew up, I think.
Well, sure. We watched him on Sci-Fi, but I think if you enjoy MST3K, it's more MST3K, and that's never a bad thing for me. I enjoyed it quite a bit. There were a few episodes that were a little bit off. I saw you pause it. No, we're recording this.
Gotta say that data or whatever.
Sam rambles about MST3K.
Shocker.
How about that? Must be a Tuesday.
It's Wednesday.
If you enjoy any MST3K, you're going to laugh at a few of the jokes.
Okay.
Some things about the show are a little bit off. I do think they're all made up for by the fact that Patton Oswalt is on it. And
he's like a super fan perfect. Too, which is really neat.
He's just perfect as the son of TV's Frank. He's perfectly cast in the role he has. MST3K.
I'm interested in your book in terms of, does the author take one stance over the other, or does he just present this to you and allow you to create your own conclusion?
Ong is taking an anthropological and a literary and studies of language. What's that word? Studying language.
Shoot. Philology.
Yes.
Philology.
The study of words and their meanings.
Yep. Philology.
Yeah.
Linguists. I was kind of thinking more linguists then.
I pulled philology out of the air and I'm still wrong. Come on, Pastor Eric.
No, the other one.
Ong himself, I don't think, is doing too much to criticize orality or the technology of literacy, as he is pulling all these disciplines who are kind of heading all in the same direction in one place, and then prescribing, you know what, you biblical theological studies people need to be paying attention to what's happening in these other disciplines, because
that's cool.
You here. And then he talks to the anthropologists and say, you're ignoring this business here. I think he happens to be a person of faith, and so he's interested especially in how this will influence biblical studies. It does shake the foundations or assumptions that you make about
chiseled in stone accuracy?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you are. That's the way to say it.
Yes.
Philology, right?
You made up for philology.
He threw you that bone.
It certainly would, considering the fact that, stories can change as we tell them to each other. How much of a case does he make for accuracy, given that that's what he's starting with?
He would say we're asking questions from literary minds that would not apply at all to the mind or to the worldview of a person whose entire frame of reference is oral tradition.
Can you give us an example of a question that doesn't apply?
If you hear a person talk about wine in this telling of the story of your great-grandfather, which has now become epic, and
you know my family really well.
You ask your grandmother, tell that story about grandfather doing this thing.
Right.
You wouldn't have heard that story twice in the same way. So it wouldn't matter to you how it happened in the original instance, because the lore is a thing of itself.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Sure.
I think I can give a good example of that then. I have a great uncle named Chop. I never met the guy. He died before I was born. This is a story that I have heard a few different times. He was in a drugstore, and they had a cigar cutter, which is a little machine that when you push your cigar into it, exactly,
right.
and that the pressure of the cigar going down into it cuts the end of the cigar off. Well, he made a bet with a guy that he'd get his finger out of there before the blade would come through. He was wrong and earned the name Chop. And that's a story I have heard many, many times. But again, I'm not sure if it was a drugstore he was in. I don't know the name of the guy that he was talking to. And I can't say for sure which finger was lost in the incident.
These are questions that would be, the word's unfair to ask.
Again, I probably should, because I could probably tell the story a whole lot better if I knew those three facts.
Right.
But again, those are facts that aren't changing the actual content of the
If I can
story.
share one of mine.
Another story about my great uncle Chop?
Yes. Perhaps you haven't heard of it. It is my great-great-grandmother, I believe. She died by falling off the wagon. So allow me to start with that. Apparently, she was standing on a wagon, had a pitchfork.
Oh, dear.
Standing on the ground as she was jumping off, and the pitchfork went up into her head, I guess, or something like that. She didn't die right away. They took her to the hospital. They're saying like she jumped onto the pitchfork and it impaled her somehow.
Crazy.
And my mom's listening to this and she's going to tell me I got it wrong somehow. But
it wasn't your aunt, it was me.
It wasn't a pitchfork, it was the dog. They took her to the hospital, and
dog
as she's leaving the hospital, pretty much fine, she has a heart attack then.
Oh.
And that's what she ends up dying from. But we think it's because being stabbed with a pitchfork. And so...
Oh. If you could have impaled on a pitchfork on your death certificate, even a small chance of it, it should be on there.
Right.
Not heart attack. That's just...
I like your story, Sam, about Chop.
Not yours.
Thanks, Dr. Eric.
And particularly about the idea of name.
Yeah.
Because I do wonder, Adam and Eve, Adam is Hebrew for from the ground.
Right.
And Eve, from him. So I do wonder to what degree, if his name is Chop, because of the events of his life, and we're taught kind of in Sunday school that so-and-so's name, it never made sense to me that a person who is known for something happening when they're 35 years old is named that.
Right.
Were they prophetically named, and then that something happened?
Right.
So I think something of that is happening with this oral telling of history. Chop is known because of what happened when he was
and here's an interesting... In Revelation, we have this idea that when we become our perfect selves and we're up in heaven, that we have a name that only God knows. Yeah. So do you think that before Adam and Eve had committed sin, that God was calling them by their perfect names?
I don't know. That introduces the whole what's happening in the divine intersection with the storyteller. As that storyteller is recounting what happened ages ago, and then what happens when the divine influence is helping record something, both those things and the brand new things in the New Testament. So I have no idea.
If we're being really strict on the purpose of names, Adam may not have needed one.
Right.
I mean, how are you going to tell those two apart? I mean, it's the person who isn't me.
Hey, you.
You know, yeah. I kind of like the idea that Adam's name was me and Eve's was you, just because Adam was born first.
Me and you and me, both of us together.
So now, Bryce,
Yes.
I understand this month you really branched out and covered a topic that's never really been discussed before on this podcast.
That's right. Spies.
My book has no spies in it.
And so I made sure to cover his base.
Previously on every episode, my book, without me trying to do this, has had spies in it. Like, I am a big fan of espionage history and that kind of stuff, but every book I've had just happens to have had spies in it.
So the book I read for this month is called Revealing the Secrets of the World's Most Powerful Spy Agency Inside the CIA by Ronald Kessler. And so Ronald Kessler was actually a journalist for a number of years. I assume he still is. I didn't look into his death or anything.
His mysterious death, investigated by the CIA shortly after this book was published.
He had actually published like stories about the FBI for quite a few years, and his publicist was like, you know, why don't you look into the CIA? And so he starts interviewing former directors. He starts interviewing former spies. And there's a few people that were accidentally outed as being secret spies for the CIA. And so he was able to talk to them because everyone knows so-and-so.
Right. Once it becomes on public record, it's okay to cover.
Right. The book is broken up into 5 different parts. Going into this, I thought that the CIA just consisted of one branch of spies. The other is the intelligence and understanding that the spies discover. And like there's actually like 4 different departments that he discusses, and that's how he breaks up each section of the book is into different departments. They're called directorates. So there's the director of operations. Those are the spies, the people that go out to other countries. The CIA gives them permission to break those countries' laws.
That's all what spy work is spy work is basically breaking the laws of another country on behalf of another country. That's very much inherent in the term.
There's a good differentiation between what is a CIA agent and what is a CIA officer. An agent are those who are recruited to work for the CIA from other countries. So if you're like a Russian ambassador, an officer who is an employee of the CIA, an American, will come to you and be like, hey, we will give you $6 million to tell us everything you know.
Yeah. Or we won't tell your wife about your mistress, or won't...
So that's the spy side. Right. Then you have the Directorate of Science and Technology. Those guys are pretty cool. Those are the guys with the satellites and all this cool stuff. Then you have the Director of Intelligence. Those guys kind of come alongside science and technology and help interpret all this information.
That's the analysts and so on.
Yeah, exactly. These are the CIA nerds. But I think that was kind of the coolest chapter because of how smart they were. And they talked about the Directorate of Administrations. So like the CIA director, they had CIA directors that had political views and how the analysts had to kind of work around those anyway.
Constantly. That's almost every single director the CIA ever had.
Yeah. And so that's kind of interesting. And then the final chapter was the Office of the Director of the CIA. The last chapter kind of just talked about former CIA directors.
So the 4 is Ops and
Science, Technology, Intelligence, and Administration.
And Administration, okay.
Yeah.
Janitors.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He leads into this by saying, you know, it is important that someone is there to order like enough paper clips.
Right.
Or office supplies. Like, that would be like my job at the CIA. Like, I feel like I could thrive as office administrator of the CIA. I can't spy. I can't understand analytics of looking at this picture over Moscow.
Yeah.
But I can get you enough Bic pens. I'll tell you that.
Actually, that brings up a good question. This is a history of the CIA written when?
It was published in 1992.
Okay, so this is super Cold War then.
Yeah, so just coming out of the Cold War, not quite getting into terrorism and counterterrorism like Osama bin Laden. The first bombing of the World Trade Center when there was a van packed with explosives in the parking garage, that happened, I think, in the late 90s. I think like 96 or something like that. So that didn't happen yet. So Ronald Kessler was really just going off post-Cold War information. A few components here. There was they call it cradiology, which I assume is the
studying cradles.
This is in the science and intelligence section, or science and technology, and these were the guys that had the satellites. And so this is a paragraph describing just how advanced their satellites are.
Okay.
The computer could even analyze the smoke coming from smokestacks and determine through spectral analysis what was being burned with infrared, which senses heat. Analysts could not only see inside the building, they could tell that a plane, for example, had been on a runway hours after it had left. I'm impressed by their intelligence, but it's so scary that they can tell just by the smoke.
Yeah, especially the time.
This is during the 90s.
Yeah.
or no, actually, not even during the 90s, because this book came out in 92.
Right.
This is 80s technology they're talking about.
It's impressive, but it's scary at the same time.
Interesting hearing that, because I just read a book recently about Eisenhower's administration and his relationship with the CIA. They talked about how they used the U-2 plane to be able to spy on Cuba, and how they were able to tell, oh, these are missiles, and this is from thousands of miles above the Earth, and this is the 50s, being able to do basically what you're talking about right now.
They do mention the U-2. Yeah.
What do they say about U-2?
They mention it in terms of...
The U-2 is a spy plane, by the way.
Not the band with Bono.
Yes. I'll be watching you.
Sam, you can either help them, they're going to do it with or without you. Okay? So they do mention having used the U-2 spy plane. They mention... I have to determine in my head, because I read a book about the declassified documents of Area 51, which is where the U-2 was essentially created. So I have to determine what information I learned from this.
Sorry, bud.
No, it's okay. I can tell you a lot about it.
I've read so many books, I have to figure out which book I'm getting this information from.
You get this place in, they call it Langley, if you've heard of it. I'm going down to Langley. What's interesting is that if you actually drive down Washington, Sam, you and I went there, there's a road sign.
Yes.
There's an exit that says CIA.
I really wanted just to pull over and see how far we could get. Oh, what building? What did the guy ask us what we were doing in front of? Was it an FBI building in Washington? We stopped and you took my picture.
I don't believe it was the FBI. It was...
Was it the CIA?
We do have photos of us in front of the FBI. We did not pull in front of the CIA.
There was some building though, and the person asked us what the heck we were doing in front of the building.
It was the Canadian consulate.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I think this beaver came out, dressed as a Mountie, gave us a donut, and asked us what we were doing.
What you doing? Hey.
What are you about?
Okay, let's get going. Have a great day.
Thank you to all our Canadian listeners who are no longer listening to this podcast. We miss you greatly. Come back to us.
Oh, Canada. Anyway, there is not actually a place called Langley. The town is not Langley.
Oh, it's not.
That actually comes from Robert E. Lee, owned part of the property that the CIA is on, and his home over in England was called Langley. What's cool about it too, like, it's not like a boring place to work, like in the hallways. It's not just like whitewashed walls and maybe like former CIA directors' photos. They actually have artists come in with installations and just kind of like liven up the place a bit.
Wait. I'm sorry. There's installation art in the CIA headquarters.
There's different portraits, and actually, if you Google it, you can look at... Actually, I might have a photo of it here for those who decide to show up today, listeners.
Yeah, we do post when we record these, everybody. I'm surprised more people don't show up. Book Reports podcast is filmed before a live studio audience.
This photo right here is a monument outside of the CIA. It is over 1,000 words long. It uses different types of ciphers and encryptions. One panel of it is the Enigma code, or for instance, or the other one is like, you need that copper plate.
Is it the same phrase?
No,
all of them?
It's the entire thing is describing the history of the CIA in about 1,000 words or so.
Oh, okay.
When it was dedicated, the transcript of it decoded was only handed to the director himself. Oh. And so, like, you can try to figure it out.
I'm just imagining like this old couple visiting Langley. My eyes must be going, Ethel. I can't read heads or tails.
All I see are zeros and ones. I don't know. But
that's binary, dear.
The gentleman who had created this installation said that he was very nervous working in the CIA. There was one day he had ordered a bunch of granite or marble slabs, about 250 tons worth, and he came in the next day and it was gone. And he was like, guys, where's my stuff? And they're like, we don't know. It just disappeared. No one could tell him. Like, they said their best guess was that maintenance assumed it was leftover garbage, threw it away.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
Yeah, it's either that or it's like a secret
I just want to say how impressed I am with the fitness of the CIA maintenance crew on being able to...
Hey! Juggling, trying to stab some granite.
And anyway...
So I wanted to kind of mention the art installation because that leads to my next section. This is in the security section. So they mentioned like the security inside the CIA. There's double chain link fences with barbed wire around it. Each chain link fence has like motion sensors on the fence so that they can tell if someone is trying to break in. So they're very concerned about security in the CIA. Occasionally, employees leave their belongings on the floor as they gaze at the art exhibits or bulletin boards listing cars for sale or houses for rent. When one man forgot to take his briefcase after resting it on the floor, the Office of Security confiscated it and took it to into a concrete-lined bomb disposal enclosure on the grounds. Fearing it might be a bomb, the guards blew it up, depriving the man of his lunch and some papers he had been working on.
Okay, it was also his birthday, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
A piece of cake in there from his wife with a nice birthday card. But I just like to think like that guy is his
favorite hat.
Where did I leave that? And boom, my lunch was in there.
Is the concrete bunker marked lost and found at the very top? Yeah.
Just scraps of debris.
Scraps of jackets and watches. Yeah.
Briefcases and moldy sandwiches. Flies buzzing around. I left it on my desk.
We don't care.
It's a bomb. There is a story that they tell of when the CIA wanted to expand their property to build more. There is a woman who lived in this like little cottage, like in her 80s or something like that, and she had a housekeeper that helped take care of her too. And the CIA was like, we're willing to pay you for this house and this property. And she's like, very kindly old woman. She's like, actually, I'm a Quaker and I don't agree with anything that you're doing. But she did agree that upon her death, the CIA would get the land. She eventually did die, and the CIA just kind of put up more fencing around her property. I think they did end up using it just for storage or something like that. I'm not sure what they actually... But it's just so funny to see that there was this lady whose house was guarded by the CIA. Like, security would walk around the premises just to be sure that she was safe.
Since this book is not a history, it is an overview of the administration of the CIA. How does how does the book show his view on the CIA?
I think he just came from as a more of a journalistic point of view. I don't think he really came at it from one point.
He doesn't color it with how he views the CIA?
I don't think so.
Okay.
He does mention earlier on that the CIA has a very spotted past. The Iran-Contra, or giving people LSD.
Or giving the smaller terrorism organizations guns. They become the bigger ones.
Yes.
We've done that about 3 times in a row now, and it hasn't worked.
We haven't learned. He definitely shares that, these things happen, but he quotes one of the officers saying, you're never going to hear about our successes. That's like a win for a CIA officer, is that no one knows their name. No one, unlike Cheers, no one knows their name.
Since 92. Can you imagine what there'd be to say?
Since then, yeah. I think if Ronald Kessler, rest his soul, is still alive... Covering my bases.
If you are in fact dead, please rate us on iTunes.
Yes. If you're not, please write an updated book, because I would love to read more.
This book ends in 2007, but if you guys want a little bit more information recently, I'd recommend A Legacy of Ashes. It's a very fun read because the perspective is everything the CIA has ever done has been a complete failure, which is a really fun perspective to have on a history. And it goes up to 2007, so it covers the War on Terror quite nicely too. That was a very interesting read.
What I do think is very interesting, very civil, is that they mention that if you are a CIA agent in another country and you're caught, if you're an American spy in another country, they probably ended up killing a few of their own people because they ended up being turned to work for the CIA. And the correct term for that is treason. So my question for you and reading for this was,
what would somebody have to give you to spy on your country?
No, I mean, like, what do you think their mindset is to create treason against their country? Because if you imagine let's say a Russian politician or something that comes up to you and says, hey, Sam, you're a famous podcaster.
Would you care to use this incredible outlet to the world's media to
further
if
the Red
Russian
Scare?
spy agencies would like to sponsor our podcast, by the way, we are amenable to that.
Or if the CIA would like to.
CIA, we're amenable to all fronts.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure the CIA hacked into your computer, deleted this section, and just said, Bryce doesn't have a podcast.
Bryce doesn't have a life, Bryce doesn't have a cat that loves him. Yeah.
Listen, CIA, there's lowballing and then there's lowballing, okay? Yeah. Like, what would possess a person
against their country?
Is it just money? Is it... What do you think?
I don't know. That's what Homeland uses. Which is quintessential CIA. Yeah.
I think there are plenty of reasons for somebody to turn against, let's say, their government instead of their country, because those are two different separate ideas.
That's true.
Sure.
I think that blackmail is the easiest and simplest one. I mean, if you have enough power in a country that you are worth becoming an asset, chances are you've made some mistakes, or at least some enemies. Yeah. Another one is ideology. I mean, for sure that there are plenty of people that were in the Soviet Union who saw that things were terrible because things were terrible. It's not like everybody in the Soviet Union was completely deluded and not able to understand that, hey, things have just got to be better somewhere else.
Right.
I would also say that, honestly, there are plenty of spies out there who are in it because of pride. If you have somebody who is trampled down in their society and really doesn't feel like they're contributing anything, going up to them and saying, hey, you could be important for us is sometimes the only thing that you need. Some people
so
don't
it's a sense of belonging. Yeah.
Well, one of the most famous spies of our time is Kim Philby. Kim Philby was one of the highest-ranking officers in British intelligence for counter-espionage and was also liaison with the CIA for a really long time. His father was also a Russian spy who had been caught before Kim Philby rose in the intelligence establishment. And Kim Philby, for almost his entire career, was a Russian spy. The whole story is so convoluted. In his case, the big thing, honestly, I think, was the fact that he just preferred Marxist ideology. From what I've read, he seemed to be just an honest Marxist. So I think believing in another government's way of life more than your own is also a perfectly valid reason to become a spy for them too. Honestly, anything that causes a person to make a stupid mistake is a great reason to make somebody a spy.
Quick disclaimer: I like America.
Well, that wraps us up for our latest episode of Book Reports Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed the fine, scintillating conversation. Pastor Eric, do you enjoy reading now? Or
have we changed your views?
We changed
I wrote down the title of the book. But don't give me a pizza because it'll take the joy away.
Hold on. Whose book did you write down? Mine or his?
Legacy of Ashes.
Yes!
Yeah.
Take that, Diener. Thanks very much for joining us today. Thanks very much for reading a book. We're sorry to have made you do that.
I blame your college, really.
Yeah, and book it. And if you have also enjoyed listening to us, please rate us on iTunes. You can find us there. It'd be really great if we get a nice review, preferably of the 5-star variety. It helps people find the show.
Sam, if I may interrupt you now.
Oh, that's really rude, Bryce. How dare you?
Okay, I'll stop. No,
SoundCloud.
I'm going to keep talking. We had someone contact us through a statistical website saying that, hey, if we want to pay them some amount of money each month, they'll provide us statistics on our podcast and like what countries listen to it. He did tell us that whether this is true or not, we reached 65th on the comedy charts in China.
Yes.
So for the rest of our future episodes, I think we're going to be in Chinese.
Thank you, China.
So we have prepared a little message here in Chinese for all of our comedy fans.
This goes out to you, China.
你好，我的名字是 Bryce， 我喜欢看着派对。
你好，我的名字是 Sam， 我喜欢打书，我不能说谎。
That's right. And Eric, since you are familiar with Google's version of whatever Chinese is,
Since you speak flawless Chinese,
I'm sure you can tell us that I said, hello, my name is Bryce, and...
Yes, and I like to party.
That's right. And Sam said, hello, my name is Sam, and...
I like big books, and I cannot lie.
That's right. Very good. Eric, I'm impressed.
you other Chinese can't deny. If you are Chinese, please rate us on iTunes. That'd be lovely. And for everyone else, though, we are also on SoundCloud. That'd be great if you could rate us there as well. You can click the magic like button or whatever it is SoundCloud does.
And actually, we just this week crossed our 100th total download and listen to on SoundCloud. They didn't give us a name, so sorry, no one won Sam's car.
Yeah, I'm really glad to. I just put a new timing belt in, so this would have been a very awkward moment to give it away. If you would,
but good timing.
If you'd like to complain about that joke, you can complain at bookreportspodcast@gmail.com. And if you can't get enough of me, you can come and find my blog at skullduggeryinthesmoke.blogspot.com. Still writing about Constantinople and probably will for the rest of the year. Our show music, as always, is by Kevin MacLeod. You can find more of his music at incomputech.com. I'm Sam.
I'm Bryce.
I'm Eric.
As always, he's Eric. Thanks very much for listening to this podcast.
I'll see you next episode.
Sorry, are you going to talk about the old lady who lives by the CIA?
Yeah.
If you're not, you should. Okay.
Not the old man by the sea, but the old lady by the CIA.
I just wanted to ask to make sure that gets excited. That's
I'll get that then.
That's delightful.
Please let me do my section. I've read this the whole month. I've tried very hard.